Michael, I was finished with a few questions. I'm going to ask you now. If you could pick up a magic phone that could ring up the 20-year-old Michael Franzese and give that young man some advice. I think at that age, maybe you're right on the edge of going into the life or thinking about it. If you could speak to him, what would you tell him?
I would tell him change direction. Do not go into this life. Help your, in my case, I'd say help your dad out in a different way. Maybe go to law school and try to win. Hindsight is always 20/20 because no matter what I did on the street, I couldn't really help my dad get out of prison. He did 40 years, even though he kept, getting out on parole and violating. So I would tell him, that's not the life you should lead. Go legit, get an education, and that's the way you should go.
Second part of that question, best advice you ever received. You already gave us great advice your father gave you in prison, but anything else that might have come from him, someone in the underworld, or maybe someone else you've met since you've gotten out? Is there anything that resonates with you as far as best advice?
I really think, especially in the life that I've led, I think that the best advice that I've been given, and, this has been verified to me in the book of Proverbs. I think Solomon was the most brilliant guy ever walked the face of the earth, with the exception of Jesus, who had a little advantage. He was God, but Solomon was brilliant, and it's been verified. My dad always told me, be a good listener, slow to speak, slow to condemn. And those things have helped me tremendously in my life, both on the street and later on. And I think that's the best advice that was ever given by my dad, and again, verified by Solomon. And what better can you get than that?
That's really, really good. Last part of that question, Michael, to the 20-year-old that's out there anywhere in the world, maybe in China, one of your fans there listening to us or watching us, advice to them. They're growing up in a brand new world, where their digital identity feels like their real identity. They've got, politics turning into Hollywood, turning into street riots. They've got, drugs of every shape and size coming at them, not to mention the digital dopamines that they're seeing. It's a different life than you grew up in or I grew up in. Advice to them to keep them kind of on a steady course.
Well, it would be kind of twofold in that way. I would tell them it's important in life to surround yourself with the right people. You are who you hang with in this life. Very, very important, because people will influence you, and you got to surround yourself with people that have your best interests at heart. And be accountable to the right people, because if you're accountable to the right people, you're going to do the right thing, or you're going to stay on the right course, on the right path in your life. And of course, with me, it's always a faith-based issue. I think there's no better accountability than to be accountable to a good and gracious God, because you're going to at least want to do the right thing. You're not always going to do it, but you're going to want to do the right thing. And of course, there's so many things. Stay off the street, stay out of crime, don't get anywhere near drugs. Drugs is a ruination. So I would hate to pack it into just one lesson. In 5 minutes, I can tell them everything that they should do, that they shouldn't do in their life, that would help them tremendously in their life.
Yeah. Whether they'll listen is a whole nother piece, but hey.
One of the things, Brian, spent so much time in prison with so many young kids coming into the system, 21, 22 years old. They all had the same story. You can write the same script. Broken home, no father figure in the house, their mom trying to do the best, and sometimes she had her own problems. She couldn't do her best. These kids get out on the street, they get in a local gangbanger, they start doing their own thing. And I always say, before you know it, they're in prison or something worse. But what do you expect from these kids? They've had no guidance, none whatsoever. In my home, I have 7 children. And even though I was away, I was married once earlier for a woman. She was a great mom. She taught the kids the right way. Her family was great. My wife, terrific mom. We held our families together. We gave the kids the best of everything. And even in my own family, my son, my Michael Jr., went crazy on me for years, got involved in drugs, got expelled from school. And I couldn't communicate with him, Brian. I communicate for a living. This kid just turned me off. He had the best of everything. He was in church, you name it, he had it. For 6 or 7 years, drove me out of my mind. My wife prayed for him every night. He and I battle like oil and water. Now, he's 32 years old, straightened out. He's doing terrific. But my point, even in the best of homes with the best of guidance, these kids have more distractions at their fingertips than we ever had as kids growing up. But what do we expect from these kids on the street that have had no good guidance? I always say this, and sometimes it's unpopular. People get upset about it, but I believe it. The root of all problems here in America, the breakup of the family. That's it. I always tell them, when my kids laugh at me, I said, you know what? This generation is going to long for the days of Donna Reed, Father Knows Best, My Three Sons, when family meant something. The family unit is so important. And unfortunately, these kids, so many of them don't have that today. And look what we have as a result.